Hi everyone and welcome to today's video where I'm going to tell you some simple locum do's and don'ts. This video is brought to you by Locate a Locum, who is a locum agency that posts thousands of shifts online for locum pharmacists to go out and work in community pharmacies. So I've been working with them for a little while now and they are sponsoring this video, so thank you to them. Okay, so let's talk about the do's first. So the first thing that I recommend you do if you have a locum shift booked is to call the pharmacy beforehand, and I just like to call this locum pharmacist etiquette. So I will call, particularly if I haven't worked for that pharmacy before, I like to call and just say, do you have any dispensers? Who are your dispensers? Is there anything you want to tell me? And I also like to ask them if there's anything they want me to get done. For example, if they want me to check a lot of docket boxes for the Monday, I just call and say, what do you want? And this is also good if you haven't worked at that pharmacy for a while. So sometimes if I have not done a shift in, let's say, 1 month or 2 months in that store, then I still call and just say, hi, it's me again. Is there anything that you would like me to do? And this helps build up the relationship with the regular pharmacist, and also you know what their priorities are for the Monday that's coming. The second thing that I recommend that you do is to ask how many blue scripts there are. So blue scripts are, for example, methadone patients or buprenorphine patients where you know that the patient has to come in for supervised consumption. And I think it's really important to ask this question as to how many people there are for that day, because it mentally prepares you. So I know roughly how many methadone patients are going to come in and if I need to get any methadone ready. And I kind of source, like, look at the supply in the controlled drugs cupboard as well. I just think, okay, is that going to be enough for my patients today? Like, I've done shifts before where I've never asked and there's been a whole line of like 80 patients waiting for methadone, and it kind of did shock me a little bit. So I like to ask just to be prepared as well. The third thing I recommend you do is actually ask if there is a dispenser. So if you are unfamiliar with the community pharmacy, like I said in my first point, then it's really good to know if there is a dispenser. I've walked into a shift before in a supermarket and the dispenser was off sick, which meant that I didn't know how to dispense anything, and it was just the pharmacist there who did know. So before they left, they gave me quick training on how to dispense, and it was a very uncomfortable shift for me. He said at the end of it that he was really surprised that I stayed for it, and I wasn't going to leave because if I'm there, I'm going to do my shift, I'm going to do the work. But looking back on it now, like, it did definitely make me feel a little bit uneasy. So I think it's really good to know if your shift has a dispenser who is familiar with the systems or not. Get to know your team and who you're working with. I know it's easy as a locum pharmacist flitting in and out of different pharmacies to just not really care, but I always like building up relationships with whoever I'm working with, and it makes it friendly. Like, the next time you see them, it's easy to be like, oh hey, how are you? And I've built up some really good friendships with the people that I've worked with in certain community pharmacies, and it's just nice. And they also put in a good word for you, so if you want a shift next time, then the regular pharmacist hears about what it's like working with you and stuff. So get to know your dispensers and your healthcare assistants and whoever else is on the shift with you. I find that to be like a pleasant environment to work in. Don't be afraid of the till. So I know that some pharmacists might think, I'm too good for that, I'm not some sort of shop assistant, and I understand, because if you work typically in industry or in hospital, I know it's not really part of our everyday role to be serving customers, but it is for a lot of pharmacists within community pharmacies, for example. And it's easy to say, like, I'm too good for a job, but I genuinely don't think that anyone out there is too good for a job. I think it's really important to be versatile and do things and show people that you're willing to do things that may not necessarily be in your job role. For example, taking out the rubbish or learning how to use the till. Like, I have seen certain pharmacists reluctant to do that, and I get it. Like, it makes sense, because obviously if you have to do stuff that other people can't do, for example accuracy checking a prescription or clinically screening it, then it makes sense as to why you wouldn't want to be on the till. But I think that if you've got the time, learn how to use it, learn how to serve people, and serve people. It's what you're there for. Shadow someone before your first shift. I think this is really important, and I always make sure that people know that they can shadow me as well. This is really important because you don't want to turn up to your first ever locum shift and be completely clueless. I think that's not going to make you happy or anyone else that you're working with happy. So I like to shadow someone, and I did this at the initial stages of my career when I had just qualified and I'd never worked as the responsible pharmacist in community before. So I just called up a friend and I was like, hey, can I just watch you? I watched them, I kind of figured the whole process out, and then I started doing my shifts. So if you're nervous, definitely shadow someone before you do your first shift. Negotiate your pay if you can. So I think some people are under the impression that a lot of agencies will take a portion of the money from you. And I can't speak for other agencies, but I can speak for Locate a Locum because I'm an ambassador for them and I clarified this with them. They have nothing to do with the hourly rate. They're simply a software platform that will show you all of the vacant shifts that haven't been taken up by a pharmacist yet in your area or wherever you're looking for the shift. They don't negotiate your hourly rate and they don't really have any input into the hourly rate either. They literally just are a software platform that show you, here are the shifts without a pharmacist yet. So it's kind of up to you to negotiate, and they don't take a portion of that hourly rate either. Like I said, I can't speak for other agencies, but I know this is the case for Locate a Locum. So yeah, if you can negotiate, then negotiate and ask for a higher rate. So on Locate a Locum, the app, the shifts that can be negotiated, there'll be like a button to say negotiate and you can try and negotiate. Not all shifts will have that, which means that they can't be negotiated and you'll have the hourly rate that's on there. I don't really negotiate that often because I really go to community pharmacy on a weekend for the experience rather than the money. But again, if you can, then try, because why not? And finally, the last thing I recommend is to leave a good handover for the next pharmacist. That is, if there is anything to hand over. Usually I try not to hand anything over because I try and finish the stuff that I have been assigned to do myself. But if there is, for example, a query patient who comes in and says, I need this sorted, but you can't sort it out because the surgeries aren't open or you need the regular pharmacist to look into it, then I make sure that I write on a piece of paper, loud and clear, dear regular pharmacist, this is what I couldn't solve, so that when the patient comes back into the pharmacy the next week, the regular pharmacist isn't left with just an angry patient because you didn't hand over that information. I'm not talking like pages and pages of things that you think the regular pharmacist should follow up, because that's not cool. So what I'm saying is try and finish everything you can, but if there is something that can't be solved that day, make sure it's handed over. Now, let's talk about some don'ts. Don't do other things on the job. So I've heard about pharmacists that come in, will do absolutely nothing and will not help their team at all. And if there's nothing to check, they'll just sit there and watch the show. I feel like there's always a job to do. So whether that's, you know, cleaning the area a little bit or organizing the shelves for the regular team, I think there's always something to do. So I don't like this whole idea of just watching a TV show on your phone. I mean, if everything is done and nobody is walking into the store and you feel comfortable in doing that, then that's fine. But also I think that it can leave a bad impression of you to the team. Yeah, it's just not nice. So I like to just kind of ask around, is there anything else that you want me to do? Is there any shelves that you want me to clean? I also look in the fridge and try and take out like medications that might be expired. I'll just check the expiry dates. And there's simple things that can be done. So make sure that you've done all of your jobs before you sit and do nothing. Don't do a bad job just because you're not going to work there again. I don't like the idea of a half-assed job because you're not the regular pharmacist. You know, we've all been there before, right? Like, have you ever started a shift or covered a ward when the previous pharmacist before you has just done an absolute awful job of it, and you get that sinking feeling, and I hate that, and I would hate to give that to someone else. So if you're going to do a job, do it properly and don't do it half-assed. As a locum pharmacist, sometimes regular pharmacists have asked me to do things like check the CD balance. And again, a lot of locums would be like, oh, why would I have to do this? I don't want to do this. It should be the regular pharmacist doing this, etc. But I always think, like, how much work does that regular community pharmacist have to deal with? And this is another job on their list. So if I can take that job off their hands, that's a good thing. Which is why it takes me back to point one, which is to call the community pharmacist beforehand and ask what they want done. And whether that's a CD balance or whether that's writing up private scripts in the register that they haven't had a chance to do it. Help them out. If you've got the time, help them, because karma is real, and if you help will come back to you. Don't offer patients options that aren't available. For example, if the surgery is closed and you know that, don't be suggesting to the patient like, okay, yeah, go back to the surgery. Sometimes an emergency supply might be needed, so it's up to you to get that professional judgment. If you are going to be referring a patient somewhere else, For example, if you don't believe in emergency hormonal contraception and you want to send them somewhere else, then make sure you're sending them to a pharmacy that actually does do that, and make sure you're sending them to a surgery that is open. Give them options that are actually viable. I know it's easy to turn people away and just think, okay, yeah, as long as they leave the store, like, they're off my back. But those patients will come back, and at the end of the day, we're here to provide a service that works for those customers and patients. So I always think, like, okay, if I walked into the store and somebody gave me this option, would it be a viable option? So check that before you make recommendations. And the final thing I recommend that you don't do is be late. And we've all been there. I have been late for a few of my shifts in community, and it's just bad because in community, you are the responsible pharmacist and they cannot open the store until you are there. So although I've had like traffic incidents or Transport for London incidents, I just try my best to preempt what's going to happen and arrive there early, just because it's so awful to turn up late and have a line of people outside the pharmacy waiting and you're just running to the store, which I have done and I will probably hopefully never do again. So don't be late, be on time, know your team, ask them what needs to be done, and be a good locum pharmacist. That way your name spreads and you'll be offered shifts when you need them the most. So yeah, that is all of my locum do's and don'ts. Remember, you can sign up to Locate a Locum using my link, and if you do that and work your first shift, then you can get a £40 voucher which you can spend in multiple stores. So thank you to Locate a Locum for sponsoring this video. I hope that it was helpful, and ask me any questions that you want in the comments box and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!